Hi, Rhema. It's week 31, day 3 of our Bible narrative reading plan. Today we are in 2 Kings chapters 18 and 19, as well as Psalm 75. In 2 Kings, we are introduced to King Hezekiah. We will be with him for a few chapters, for a few readings in our plan. And we learn that Hezekiah was the son of Ahaz, and he began reigning at a young age. But we're told something very important about him. Verse 3 and 4. He did what was right in the eyes of the Lord, according to all that David, his father, had done. Now, we just saw that his father is Ahaz, but he's walking in the steps of his great-great-great-grandfather, David. He's walking so much so like David that the author of Kings wants to point that out to us. He's walking in the ways of righteousness. How does he do that? Verse 4 tells us, he removed the high places. He broke down the pillars and cut down the Asherah. He even broke the pieces of the bronze serpent that Moses had made in the wilderness. Moses had made that on direction of God, but people had taken it through the years and had begun to worship it. So we see that Hezekiah rips out all of the false worship of the people of Israel. None of the other kings had done this. So Hezekiah is doing exactly what the Lord would have him to do. He does what is right in the eyes of the Lord. The text tells us, verse 5 makes clear, he trusted in the Lord, the God of Israel, so that there was none like him among all the kings of Judah after him, and none among those who were before him. He was in a league all of his own. And verse 6 says, he held fast, he clung, he drew near to the Lord. He did not depart from following him, and he kept the commandments that the Lord commanded Moses. So the Lord is with him. But verse 7 tells us something important. Hezekiah rebelled against the king of Assyria and would not serve him. What's going to happen? Well, verses 9 through 12 remind us that the northern kingdom has just been conquered by Assyria. We saw that in yesterday's reading in 2 Kings 17. And so we're beginning to wonder, what is Hezekiah going to do? And there's a lot that happens in these two chapters. I can't rehearse all of it for you, but you see that Sennacherib, the king of Assyria, he sends his delegation to try to convince Hezekiah, you don't want to rebel against me. And for just a moment, in verse 14, we see Hezekiah, he seems to waver, but the text doesn't comment on it a whole lot. Hezekiah says, I've done wrong, withdraw from me, whatever you impose on me, I will bear. So perhaps Hezekiah faltered for just a brief moment, but regardless, Sennacherib, the king of Assyria, he wasn't having it. He wasn't accepting a truce at this point, and so he's on his way. He sends his delegation. Verse 17, the Tartan, the Rabsaris, the Rabshakeh, these are all titles from his kingdom, the Assyrian kingdom. They're not individual names, but they're titles. And so these men go, and they're speaking with with Hezekiah, and Hezekiah's representatives, and they're standing out there in outside the walls, and everybody can hear what they're saying. And so some of Judah's people say, look, can you speak to us in Aramaic? We can understand it, but they can't, and then they won't be afraid. And so the Rabshakeh says, oh no, I'm going to speak even louder. And so he keeps questioning God. They misunderstand what Hezekiah has done. They think when Hezekiah has ripped out the high places, the altars, they say, look, this is why your God is mad at you. This is why he won't defend you. And so you need to surrender to us. Give up and let us conquer you without even a fight. And so the Rabshakeh, he begins speaking even louder, and he's questioning God, and this goes on and on. And so what happens when Hezekiah hears about this? Chapter 19, verse 1, as soon as Hezekiah hears it, he tears his clothes, he covers himself with sackcloth, and goes to the house of the Lord. This is a sign of great mourning. And he sends for Isaiah, the prophet, and he tells Isaiah in verse 4, will you pray for the remnant that is left? The remnant of God's people, will you pray for them? And then verses 8 through 13 show us that Sennacherib, he is not relenting in any way. He has mocked God. And verse 10 says, do not let your God in whom you trust deceive you. So earlier, while they're standing outside the wall, the people are saying, look, don't let Hezekiah deceive you about what God's going to do for you. And now they take it even further, and they say that the God of Israel is a God of deception. So they're slandering the name of God. Hezekiah, verses 14 through 19, prays. He doesn't ask Isaiah to pray again. He himself prays. And then verses 20 through about 34 in there, you see that there's a prophecy from Isaiah. He prophesies that Sennacherib will fall. He's already said in verse 7, that God says through Isaiah, I will put a spirit in him so that he will hear a rumor and return to his own land, and I will make him fall by the sword in his own land. How does the chapter end? With exactly that happening. The Lord fights the battle for Hezekiah, just as he's done for the faithful leaders before in Israel's history. And so verse 35 of chapter 19, that night the angel of the Lord went out and struck down 185,000 in the camp of the Assyrians. And when people arose early in the morning, behold, there were all dead bodies. So God sends the angel of the Lord, and God fights the battles for them as he has done before. Sennacherib returns to Assyria. When he gets there, he's worshiping in his idolatrous house of false worship, and his sons slip in and kill him. And so just as Isaiah has prophesied, he's returned home and he's fallen. God has fought this battle for Hezekiah and for Judah. We'll see more about Hezekiah in the coming days, but for now, here's a summary of today's reading. For more information, go to tunemyheart.org.